Welcome aboard Rocket Ship, the platform with the most relevant content for competitive examinations. This is Rocket Ship IAS Lab and continuing with our series on answer writing for general studies papers of civil services main examination, we take up a question that you might come across in GS paper 3. Here goes the question. Treating and reusing wastewater can go a long way in solving many environmental issues faced by India. Elucidate. What policies are in place to encourage reuse of treated wastewater? So you can see the question is framed in a manner where it has two parts. The first part talks about how treating and then reusing wastewater can help India deal with many environmental issues that it faces. You are supposed to throw light. Basically, you are supposed to elucidate on this plant. In the second part, the question requires you to talk about the policies that are already in place to encourage reuse of treated wastewater. It's quite straightforward. However, we must caution you, as is typical of questions in GS paper 3, this question requires some kind of specific technical knowledge, and we would be coming across a number of pieces of statistics as we go through the lecture, and we would suggest you that you have your running notes ready so that you can note down the important pieces of statistics that we discuss throughout the lecture. Anyway, we are starting our discussion with citing a very important piece of data, actually something that is quite alarming, that with per capita annual water availability of less than 1500 cubic meter, India is already counted among the water stressed nations. Basically, the nations where water availability is less than 1700 cubic meter annually. With the uncertainties accompanying climate change, India is staring into water scarcity. Basically, most people fear that with climate change and the uncertainties that it brings, India would also probably deteriorate into a water scarce situation. Right now, it's water stressed, but it would probably deteriorate into water scarce situation for India. At the same time, Indian urban areas, it's another piece of important statistic, that Indian urban areas produce almost 72 billion liter of wastewater per day. That is almost 50 liter, more than 50 liter per person per capita is produced by the urban areas themselves. If we counted the, you could say, most of the rural areas, it would be probably sufficient enough to actually deal with most of our water scarcity, of which, that is of the 72 billion liter wastewater produced per day, of which less than 30%, or actually around 28%, is treated. Experts share the view that treating the massive volume of wastewater and reusing it can go a long way in solving myriads of environmental issues that India faces. How treating wastewater is a solution to many problems faced by India? Taking them one by one. First is pollution of rivers and reservoirs. Basically, many Indian rivers and, you could say, surface water sources and even groundwater is mostly polluted due to wastewater, and effluent treatment can resolve water pollution. As we would see through examples, that even in India's case, there is sufficient evidence that wastewater treatment can actually deal with the problem of water pollution in major Indian rivers. It can actually reduce the pollution in those rivers. It can also help us deal with overexploitation of groundwater and surface aquifers. Basically, if we started reusing the treated wastewater, we can actually cut on the overexploitation, or for that matter, extraction of water from underground and surface aquifers. It can also help deal with the pollution of soil pollution. Basically, soil is contaminated with heavy metals chemical residues, etc. Many a times wastewater has been found to have these contaminants like heavy metals, or for that matter chemical residues, etc., which can actually pollute the soil. And this is a major concern for a country like ours, where the arable land, where the fertile land is quite scarce. Wastewater generally carries the waterborne diseases pathogens. So if we were to treat this wastewater, we can actually deal with the problem of waterborne diseases as well, whose disease load is quite heavy in the case of India. Anyway, detailing these points, untreated sewage and industrial effluents pollute rivers anyway, ponds, and even groundwater. This has been a culprit in high levels of microbial load and inorganic contaminants in India's rivers. At the same time, treatment of effluents and sewage has been the main mover behind successful treatment of sewage and effluents has been the main mover behind successful river cleaning examples like Sabarmati in Gujarat and Vaigai in Tamil Nadu. Actually, this is a very important you could say piece of general studies. That is, you are supposed to look up Vaigai river. It's a river on which one of the most, you could say, industrialized regions in India is based. Actually, it's in Tamil Nadu. You just look up what it is all about, Vaigai river. Anyway, the next point is the Central Groundwater Board, another piece of important statistics. That is, the Central Groundwater Board has estimated that 17% of India's groundwater blocks are exploited beyond replenishment rates. Basically, they are overexploited. This is same story with surface aquifers as well. Reusing treated wastewater can be an alternative to groundwater and surface water extraction. This point does not need much elaboration. That is, if we started using more and more wastewater, treated wastewater actually, for other purposes, for an example, the municipal cleaning and all those things, even some form of irrigation as well, we can actually cut on extracting water from underground and surface aquifers. Wastewater often has contaminants. This is very important, that wastewater often has contaminants like heavy metals, agrochemical and chemical residues, etc. These contaminants can pollute soil and can even enter the food chain with food crops. It can actually enter the food web with food crops. Wastewater treatment can reduce these contaminants to safe levels. We think it's pertinent to discuss an important concept in the passing. This is the concept of biomagnification. Biomagnification. What generally happens, most of these contaminants, for an example heavy metals and inorganic contaminants, inorganic pollutants, actually build up as we move from the lower to higher trophic levels. This is called the phenomenon of biomagnification. That is, their concentration rises. For an example, their concentration is X in the case of the herbivore. It would probably increase 10 times when we go to the carnivore, that is actually consuming the herbivore. So basically, this is the phenomenon of biomagnification, and it is a matter of great concern for the biosphere itself. Not only, you could say, local level, it can actually be a great concern for the biosphere itself, the entire local ecosystem. Wastewater has been found to harbor pathogens like coliform bacteria and even some antibiotic resistant superbugs like those resistant to carbapenems. So we can see that wastewater can actually be a breeding ground for pathogens like coliform bacteria, E. coli, and even some antibiotic resistant superbugs like those resistant to carbapenems. Actually, this has been a specific case in India that the antibiotic resistant pathogens have been found in wastewater. Wastewater treatment methods like activated sludge method can lower concentration of carbapenems resistant Klebsiella species and you could say other bacteria as well. We would briefly discuss what activated sludge means. However, we would suggest you that you look it up. What activated sludge is all about? We use microbial culture is added to wastewater. Here, microbial culture is added to wastewater to actually consume most of the organic material present in the wastewater and decrease the pathogen load. It actually decreases the pathogen load. So basically, it can also help us deal with the problem of waterborne diseases. Now, coming to what policies are in place to encourage the reuse of wastewater, treated wastewater. Recognizing the potential of wastewater treatment and its reuse, a number of policies have been framed to encourage its reuse. First is the National Water Policy itself. The National Water Policy, first formulated in the year 2012, mandates reuse of treated wastewater in agriculture and industry. Then comes the National Framework on Safe Reuse of Treated Water, which establishes technical standards for reusable wastewater. Basically, to what standard the wastewater should be treated to make it consumable, and empowers states to formulate their own reuse policies. Basically, the states are empowered to form state specific policies for the reuse of treated wastewater. Programs like, you can understand very well, it looks quite intuitive, that programs like Swachh Bharat, Namami Gange, etc. include treatment and reuse of wastewater as their goals. Actually, the Namami Gange program is mostly based on treatment of the sewage that falls in the Ganga river. Basically, it's all about sewage treatment and effluent treatment plants, establishing those plants. Anyway, so this was all on, you could say, the treatment of wastewater and how it can deal with a number of environmental problems faced by India. For example, pollution of river and groundwater sources, the waterborne diseases, as well as pollution of soil. Moreover, we have already talked about, in this lecture we have talked about the policies that are in place, that are afoot to encourage the use of treated wastewater. This is all for today. We would reassemble for the next lecture in a few days. As usual, we wish you all the best. Thank you.